What is the best way to track foods?
I can give you the method that I like to use to track foods. To reference Full Metal Jacket, there are many like it, but this one is mine. Or rather, the one that I use in this case, the one that I recommend. To get this out of the way first, I much prefer to track foods using a scale that measures in grams. I like grams because it offers you a higher resolution and a slightly more accurate measurement as far as how much food you actually eat. Next, I also prefer that if you have just started tracking your food or have an interest in tracking your food, that when you start to do it, you actually take it as an opportunity to start making your own food as much as possible. And this gives you an interesting twofold benefit. One, you improve your skill of cooking. I guess that gives you a third one. Two, you know exactly what you put in your body because you made it yourself. And now three, you know exactly how much of each thing. The twofold component of the best way to track food, or the way that I recommend, amounts to when you first start making your own food, and of the food that you do make, measure the individual components on a scale by grams. And those two things combined give you just so much structure and so much freedom at the same time. I actually think that one leads to the other, although that opens up another can of worms. So this, now, when you know how much of a particular food you eat and the amount of that food, you can then reference any number of public databases that exist in applications that have their own either user entry databases or the USDA, or most commonly, you just look at the label of the food that you eat, and it will tell you how many calories, protein, carbohydrate, fat, etc. in that food on the label, and it will tell you the amount of grams or the amount of mass per serving. And from there, you can calculate very simply how many servings of that food I've eaten, and you can end up logging what you track anywhere you'd like. I tend to lean towards pen and paper, although a lot of tracking applications exist, and you literally just, when you start making your own food, you measure the individual components in grams, and then you take that, you cross-reference the weight of that food to a database, and you can calculate out very simply. In many cases, an application will calculate out for you when you put in the amount of food you've consumed. It'll spit out the calories, protein, and carbohydrate and fat for you. And that just really straightforward. So to summarize again, start cooking for yourself and track the ingredients on an individual level, so you know how much, you know exactly what you eat, how much of what you eat, and then cross-reference those foods to a publicly available database. Most of the time you will find that right in a calorie tracking application.
How exact do I need to be in my tracking?
I have an annoying answer of as exact as it takes. I can provide an interesting sort of, I suppose, give and take, where I would say the accuracy of your tracking often depends on the variety of foods you consume. In other words, the fewer foods you eat, the more likely you will have consistent amounts of those foods when you eat them. And that makes it easy for you to either add or subtract in proportion of a typical meal. If you eat a ton of different foods, which I tend to recommend to cover all of your bases, to get in as many different foods as you can, you know, to have a staple foods, I suppose. And that if you have a huge variety of foods, you'll end up having a little bit more flex as far as how much food you will eat in a given meal. In a situation like that, accuracy probably matters more because you have less experience with eating those foods. So I guess to summarize this, if you like your body exactly how you have it right now, well then you have made your tracking exact enough. If you would like to make changes to your body and you currently track your food and your results have stagnated, well then that gives cause to audit the exactness or the accuracy of your tracking. So if you eat enough to progress toward whatever goal you have and the results have stalled, well then I would do the computer hotline question of, are you absolutely sure it's plugged in? In other words, do you know for certain, you know, within reason, that you actually eat the amount that you record? And sometimes taking an extra week or two to get more exact and tighten up your tracking will actually do plenty to get the ball rolling again on progress. So we can separate this out two different ways. One, if you want to maintain the physique you have, well then you have exact enough tracking. Two, if you want to change the physique you have, then it makes sense to audit the exactness of your current tracking. If you already track and your progress has stagnated, it gives cause to audit the exactness, to keep everything the same, to keep what you eat the same, and take greater care in your measurements. And often, again, that will cause progress to continue rolling. So really, you can make it as exact as you want. Just make the decision of, whether or not you want to make changes, and if so, you can then correlate it with the exactness of the tracking you already have. And in my opinion, you track what you eat, whether you realize it or not. You track with your eyes, you track with your hands, you track with the size of the plate, you track with your emotions, you track with how your clothes fit, you track with the mirror. You track a million different ways, whether you want to track or not. So I take the position that, well, if you track whether you want to or not, you may as well use accurate tools, like commercially available tools with greater accuracy than the current methods you already use, and start tracking on purpose instead of tracking on accident. And then as you gain experience with measuring your staple foods, that makes it easier for you to start branching out and having greater variety and also retaining the accuracy of your tracking.
If you're picking up what I'm putting down and want to learn more about cognitive nutrition so you can finally live the life you deserve, then learn about my Kickstart program by clicking the link in the description box below.